Meanwhile, a Mercer University professor, along with his 12-year-old daughter, are preparing to evacuate from Ukraine.
Political science professor Chris Grant spoke to Ashlyn Webb from Kiev tonight about what it looks like on the ground and their plan to relocate. Ashlyn joins us in studio with more.
Yes, Chris Grant is likely a familiar name to many of you at home. In fact, you've probably seen him here on 13 WMAZ. He's one of our go-to experts for things relating to elections, the Georgia General Assembly, and state laws. For the past 3 weeks, Grant has been in Ukraine doing research as a Fulbright Fellow. But just weeks after arriving in Kyiv, he and his daughter are preparing to evacuate. Since touching down in Ukraine on January 2nd, Mercer University political science professor Chris Grant has documented his time in the country.
So we're out and about this day. We're in the part of Kyiv that's called Podil.
Taking his followers through Kyiv for a trip they expected to last through August.
Certainly a beautiful city and a little cold, a little windy.
But just 3 weeks after unpacking their bags, he and his daughter Olivia are packing back up.
Nobody wants to be in the middle of a hot war. Especially not with my 12-year-old daughter.
The U.S. State Department advises American civilians to leave the country this week. Grant says he feels safe, but
if they tell us to go, I go.
The evacuation is a response to roughly 100,000 Russian troops gathering near Ukraine's border in recent weeks. Grant says that's not far, about an hour and a half away from where he's been staying.
My sense of it is something is going to happen. I don't think you build up 100,000 troops on a border and nothing comes of it.
Grant says on the streets of Kyiv, things seem to be operating like usual, but he says you can feel the tension in the air.
We wound up just coming across a group of people, children, adults, old people, holding up the Ukrainian yellow and blue flag colors. And they were holding them up. There was a long drape that they were holding up in a pretty prominent square in the city. And you see that was pretty spontaneous. Today we were in a metro station and we heard a group of people singing Ukrainian songs of freedom and defense of freedom.
Grant says he's also heard of paramilitary groups preparing for a possible incursion to defend their homes. The political science professor says living through this reminds him of how grateful he is to be an American citizen.
We don't worry about our currency collapsing. We don't worry about an outside power invading our country. We don't worry about these things on a day-to-day basis. My Ukrainian and Georgian and Moldovan friends worry about this from the time they're young kids.
Grant says the State Department and Embassy constantly keep him and other Americans in the country updated. He let me know this evening that he and his daughter plan to evacuate to Warsaw, Poland by Thursday. They expect to be back in central Georgia by the middle of next week. Frank, Lori, back to you.
Hi, thank you, Ashlyn. President Biden held classified briefings for House and Senate leadership on the situation with Ukraine and Russia. It comes a day after 8,500 American troops were put on high alert.